Hey guys, and it's time to do the August Kimberbell Club project, and it's the little Trapunto pillow. And the Trapunto is just, it has the raised effect on the little birds and the little flowers and all. So let's get started. So for this project, you have two options. If you have the 5x7 or 6x10 hoop, you'll be doing what I'm doing in the video. So it's going to be a multi-hooping project, and that's what I'm going to show in the video. Those instructions are going to start on page 4. But if you don't want a multi-hoop and you have an 8x12 or 8x14 hoop, then on page 12 it's the instructions for the 8x8 design. And basically it's the same concept, you're just doing one hooping instead of two. So, but I'm going to do the multi-hooping project. So what's in your kit, you'll have the pieces of fabric, the yellow fabric for the little border of the pillow, and then you'll have your two back pieces, and you'll have your front piece, and then you'll have one piece of flex foam, and it's big enough to do the 8x8, but if you are doing the multi-hooping, you're going to cut it into two pieces. One needs to be 3 inches wide, one needs to be 4.5 inches wide. And then if you're doing the multi-hooping, you'll need a couple of thumbtacks. Then everybody will need thread, your scissors, Kimberbell tape, some of the project batting, a piece of the project batting, and then your stabilizer. They're calling for the medium weight cutaway stabilizer. If you're doing the multi-hooping, you'll need 2 pieces for your 5x7 hoop. If you're doing the 8x8, you just need 1 piece for your bigger hoop. Now, on your thread, back to thread, we talked about stabilizer, I think, last week, and saving the roll of your stabilizer and all. Now, this week, just kind of a tip. When you buy your Isacord thread, or really any thread that have the number on the little sticker there, what I do is I write that number down with a Sharpie down in the spool of thread, because like on this one, we've lost the sticker. The thread's almost gone, so we've had this one for a while, and the sticker's gone, but I can look on the bottom of it and I still know what color number it is. So now also I'm changing up the thread just a little bit on page 4. It has like a little thread chart. I'm going to be doing the 2 shades of blue for the bird and the green for the leaves, but then I'm going to do a pink flower instead of purple, and where it's calling for the orange, I'm going to be doing the yellow. And then we also need white. And then it said to do the quilting on the fabric in kind of the cream color, and I'm just going to use the white for the quilting on the fabric. Then on your machine, on your USB stick, you'll have 3 stitch files. The 8x8 will be the one circle design, so you'll pull it up. On this machine, it only pulls up the 6x10 or the 5x7 design, so I have 2 of them. And the first design I'm going to be pulling up is going to be the one that the moon shape is to the right. So it's that half of it. So I'm going to get that design. And then we're stitching directly on the stabilizer. I've hooped up a piece of the medium weight cutaway, and I've just threaded up with the white thread, and we're going to stitch the placement line on the cutaway. And it's stitching a placement line and 2 little tick marks. Okay, I also forgot you need your 8x8 pillow form, and some of you have ordered that. And then the prep work, you want to iron a piece of the SF101 onto the back side of your main pillow front piece. But we don't need that one yet. So it's stitched the little placement line, okay? And I've just drawn it in with the Friction pen so you can see it. Okay, sprayed my stabilizer with the 505 spray, or we have those new 505 glue sticks. You could use that too. And so I folded my piece of project batting in half, line it up with the little tick marks there, the fold, and then unfold it and stick it down. And now it's just going to stitch the tack down to hold that project batting in place. Okay, it's stitched the tack down, and I've drawn it in with the Fricks-On again so you can see it. And so what we're going to do now is trim just this half of the batting, the outside piece, but we don't want to trim over here. So just come up right where that circle starts and then just start trimming like you do applique. Okay. Now, the next stitch out is the placement line for the flex foam. And this is a lot, okay? Can you see that? And I know I need to lay the flex foam down here over all of this. So I'm not going to stitch out the placement line. So I'm just going to forward through that. Okay, now it's going to be on the tack down. And I got kind of confused because I messed up the machine there. I can see I'm on step number 4 on the machine. And so remember, on your instructions, it has the little sewing machine step. And so that was the placement line. I'm going to lay the bigger piece of flexi foam. So this is the one that's 4.5 inches. And now it'll stitch the tack down is step number 4. So I'm just going to lay that down. I am going to tape it, I think, down because sometimes it wants to creep and crawl on us. I'm also, okay, notice how tight that is sitting on this flex foam. I'm going to raise that presser foot height a little bit. So I'm going to go into the settings here and go over to embroidery foot height. And I'm going to raise that up a little bit. And maybe one more. And it doesn't raise until you start stitching. Now it's not smushing that flex foam down, but it's still kind of just kissing the fabric. And that's the flex foam. That's what you want. We'll come back when this is done. Okay, now the next thing that's going to be stitching. Now remember, this is for the multi-hooping project. So if you're doing the 8x8, you won't have a lot of these steps, but those instructions are on page 12. Okay, so on page 6, on step 13, instruction step 13, it's saying to stitch these little basting stitches in a visible color. I'm just going to go ahead and use the white thread because I know they're there. I know I'm going to need to take them out. So we're just going to stitch these basting stitches. And it's right on the edge, basically, of the my flex foam. Okay. And now, the reason what those basting stitches are for is because this part right here is the other half of the bird, and I laid my flex foam down just right even with that tack down there. And so it's basically exactly where it needed to be. But if you had extended and had your flex foam over here a little bit, it would stitch that basting stitch so that you could trim that flex foam down against that stitch. And then when we do the other half of it, your next piece of flex foam will butt up right against that. So that's what those basting stitches are for. I just happened to get lucky and I laid mine down exactly on the edge of that. So it worked. But now you're going to go in and we're going to trim all this flex foam away from that tack down. So this is going to take just a little bit, so we will come back when I'm done trimming all this flex foam. Okay, I got the flex foam trimmed away, and I wasn't exact, you know, just around the images. I'm not going to worry about taking out my basting stitches because they're right beside the flex foam and they're white, so they're not going to show, so I'm not going to worry about that. What's going to stitch off next is going to be a little crosshair in the center, and that's going to be a placement line for the piece of fabric. So I am going to be using the white thread for that because I don't want this to show through my fabric. Okay, so it's stitched the little crosshairs, and I've just highlighted it in the pink. And then what we're going to be doing is placing our top piece of fabric down. And in the instructions somewhere it says to use, you might want to use like double, you know, fold the tape over to stick this down. I just sprayed my hoop with 505 spray, so that's going to help hold my fabric in place. So we're going to take our piece of fabric. It has the SF101 iron to the back side, so we're going to fold it right sides together in half, and then fold it again. And so then this next fold, it'll be wrong sides together, so you're just folding it together like that. We're going to place the corner in this top corner of the crosshairs, and then just stick that down, flip it over, stick that down, flip it over, and stick that down. And then now it's going to start stitching the little decorative design. So the next thing it's going to stitch is the little border, and it's going to be in the yellow thread is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to thread up for yellow. Okay, so we're on step 21 of your instructions. It's step 7 for the machine, and it's just going to start stitching this little decorative border. And it says it's going to take about 2 minutes to stitch that. And I think the reason it's doing this outside edge first is to help hold your fabric down. Then we're going to come in and do the quilting, and then it's going to come back and we're going to stitch the other little border. So it's just, this first one's helping to hold your fabric down in place. So we'll be back. Alright, it finished stitching that first little outside border, and so now it's going to start the quilting. And so I've just threaded up with the white color, and we will start that, and it's going to take about 7 minutes to stitch that quilting, so we will come back when it's done. Okay, it finished stitching the quilting, and now on step 23 of your instructions it does say to clip any of the little jump threads, and so I've done that. I've threaded back up with the yellow, and what it's going to stitch next is just the other little border out here. So and really the rest of this is just going to be stitching the embroidery design. So after it stitches the yellow border, it'll stitch the green little stems, then the bird in 2 different shades. I'm going to be doing the yellow there. I'm going to be doing the pink for the flowers. So I'm just going to kind of keep on going through doing the embroidery, and we'll come back on step 32. Okay, so it finished stitching the design, the first part of the design, and step 32 says to use a visible color thread to stitch the little registration marks, and so the last color that I used was the yellow, so I'm just leaving that in the machine. And so what it's going to stitch now are the registration marks that we'll take out when we're done to remove those, but those registration marks are going to help us do the rehooping. Okay, so I'm just going to trim the stabilizer away, and this is a cutaway, so I'm just going to go right to the outside of the design here. Don't trim your fabric or your batting or anything else. Okay, I've trimmed the stabilizer away, and I've hooped up the other piece of the cutaway, and then I'm back on the USB stick. I'm going to pull up the other part of the design, and I've threaded back up with the white, which I probably could have done this in the yellow also, but what it's going to stitch off first are the registration marks on the stabilizer. Okay, I've stitched off the registration marks and I highlighted them in pink, and then I went ahead and I've sprayed my hoop with my stabilizer with the 505 spray. And so now I'm going to take the thumbtacks and I'm going to turn the hoop over to the back side. There's the registration marks so y'all can see them. And so the registration marks are kind of just that little L shape. And so I'm going to be sticking the thumbtack right in the corner of that L shape. And you can check it from the other side, and I missed that. Let's try right there. Right there. And then tape that in place. And again, this is on the back side of your hoop. There we go. Tape that one down. Okay, so your hoop lays like that. We're going to take, and again, this is for the multi-hooping. We're going to take the project, fold this part of the fabric over to your right, and we're going to line up now those registration marks here on the front. And so I'm going to poke that one right through the corner of that registration mark, and then this one into the corner of that one. Scooch it over just a little. Okay, and then stick that down. Okay, also remove your thumbtacks. Don't forget to do that. Now, and I would definitely use 505 spray because we're going to be flipping your fabric and all back and forth, and so you want to make sure that it's folded completely out of the way. But the batting, I'm not going to stitch that placement line for step 10 right here. I know the batting has to go over that, so I'm just going to make sure the batting is squished down, your fabric is flipped over, and so I'm going to forward through that placement line. And what it's going to stitch now is the tack down to hold that batting in place, and just make sure it's not going to stitch through your fabric. So make sure you do have that fabric folded out of the way. Close. Okay, and so now I need to go in and I need to trim my batting. So I can get up in there. Don't cut the fabric. And I have the batting trimmed trimmed. Now, I was really kind of worrying and really fretting over whether my registration marks were exactly lined up, because I was worried that when we stitch this yellow border, if it's not lined up, those aren't going to match. But they were smart enough to make it so that where the borders have to line up, there's a flower there, and then there's the bird's tail right there. So if you're not exactly dead on, we're okay. So makes me feel better. So now what's going to stitch next is the placement line for the flex foam. Again, I'm not going to stitch that. I know where the flex foam needs to go. So it's going to be that other little piece, okay? And then it's going to butt right up next to that first one. And so basically just kind of line right up next to, I'm going to use this end. And I'm going to spray it with 505 spray. Okay, so I sprayed it with the 505 spray, and I'm just sticking that flex foam down, butting it right up next to that fold. And so what's going to stitch next is going to be the tack down. Not right there though. There we go. And my presser foot is still raised up to that 3. So when we're done with this project, we've got to make sure we go back and we put that presser foot pressure back down. We'll come back when it's done. Okay, so after it stitches that tack down, I'm just going to go in and trim all the flex foam away, and we'll come back when I'm done. Okay, I trimmed all the flex foam, and then I went ahead and I've sprayed this section with the 505 spray, because what we're going to do next is take this part of the fabric, flip it back over, and I'm going to kind of pull on it just a little bit and smooth it out. And now with the 505 spray, it'll stick to the hoop good. And what it's going to stitch next, oh, and I think we need to remove, no, not yet. It's going to do a basting box to kind of hold this fabric down, and then after that we're going to remove the registration marks. This is the little basting box to kind of hold it together. And then after this step, it does say, check the registration marks to ensure they are still aligned. If needed, unpick the basting stitch and adjust the fabric. Well, we're just going to hope they're still aligned. I think they are. So now I'm just going to pick the little registration marks out. Okay, so I got most of that registration mark out. I still have like one little thread snip right there. But what's going to stitch next, we're on step 22 of the instructions, step 7 for this particular design, and it's going to do that first yellow border on the outside of it, and then we'll stitch that border, then it will do the quilting, and then we'll come back and do the other border. So we'll just keep going. It finished stitching, and so what I need to do now is I'm going to unhoop it and then take the basting stitches out, that square basting stitch, take it out, trim the other piece of cutaway down, and then we'll go out to the cutting table and we'll cut it down to size. Okay, so we're ready to cut it down. It needs to be cut down to an 8.5 by 8.5. So you can use your square orange pop ruler, and if you have a smaller cutting mat like this one, I can turn. And Kimberbell is actually supposed to be coming out with a rotating small mat that is supposed to fit in the new tool tote that your orange pop rulers also fit in. So we're waiting for that to come out. So what I'm going to do, you just line up the design, get it centered in that ruler. Does that look centered? Yes. Okay, and then you take your rotary cutter and you're going to cut to the inside, and you just want your blade, you know, up against the ruler. And so just keep it up against there, cut that side, and then you rotate it. And you can start and stop in the little channels of the ruler. There we go. And so now, whoops, if your rotary cutter is sharp, you've got that cut out. And now we'll go to the machine and start putting it together. Okay, I'm actually starting at the serger because your two back pieces, we need to hem one of the long edges on each back piece, and instead of doing the little narrow hem with the presser foot, with the sewing machine, using the presser foot that narrow hems, or just folding it over and then folding it over again and top stitching, I'm just going to run it through and do a rolled hem on the serger. And so we had this one set up this week for our little trash caddy classes, so it was just right here handy. Okay, got them both done. So we just did one long side on each back piece. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine. Okay, so to put the pillow together, what we're going to do is just take the two shorter strips of your border fabric or the flange fabric, and we're going to stitch those on either side. So put them right sides down, and we're just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides. Now I just stitch those 1/4 inch seam, flipped them over, and it says in the instructions, be careful when you're pressing the seams over. Don't touch, you don't want to squish the flex foam, you want to keep the Trapunto look, so just press the seam. And now we'll just attach the lower flange pieces, so put them right sides together on the bottom and on the top, and then we'll stitch those with a 1/4 inch seam also. I have the flange pieces sewn on, and so now we just need to attach the two back pieces. So you're just going to take one of them, lay it right side down with the edge that you hemmed to the inside, match up the edges, and then lay the other piece right side down and overlap the centers here, and then we're just going to stitch all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I've stitched all the way around, and then we're just gonna clip the corners and then turn it right side out, and then I'll take it to the ironing board and press it good, and then we will come back and create the little flange part of the pillow. Poke out your corners and then go press it. Okay, what I'm doing now after I've pressed it is we're going to stitch in the ditch along the edge of the flange. So I just went and got the edge stitch foot, and I just lengthened my stitch length a little bit, make sure my needle's in center needle position, run that blade right in the ditch, and then the needle should fall right along there. And there we go. So once I finished stitching in the ditch, I just stuffed the pillow form in the back of it, and it's done. Pretty cute.